All right, we have a scarf joint here with a couple of steps. I want this to be epoxied together, so we're going to take it apart now that it's all dry fit and epoxy this together, and I'm going to show you how. Put a clamp here so it doesn't pull those threads when they are almost out on this last screw. Now you can see that that scarf is released. We're going to put a piece of wax paper behind so we don't glue it to the boat. And then we'll put this back together like this with some epoxy in here. And then it'll be one piece of wood. Mix up some total boat epoxy, 5:1 traditional. We only have 2 of these joints to do, so I'm pretty sure that 1 pump will be enough. Hardener always drips down, so you gotta kind of prime it. There we go. All right, I'll mix that up. We'll first wet the joint with just the straight epoxy, then we will add some thickener into it and put that in after the straight epoxy soaks into the wood a little bit. Okay, we don't need to make a big mess here. All we want to do is wet both surfaces with some unthickened epoxy so it'll soak in, so we don't end up with a joint that doesn't have enough epoxy in it. We'll do this one, then the other one. So we have the 2 joints. We'll let it set for a few minutes, soak it up. Add a little thickener. Just a little bit more. All right, I'm going to wax this screw that's going through that hole through the epoxy with this paste wax in hopes that it won't stick to it. I don't want this stuff anywhere near anything I'm going to varnish. Hopefully that'll do it. Okay, let's get this area ready. Pull this inside piece in. Now we're just waiting a couple more minutes for this to soak right into the wood. You don't want to starve that joint of epoxy. Okay, we've got our thickened epoxy. We've got the epoxy we already put on there about 7-8 minutes ago, so that's had time to soak in. Now we're going to add some thickened epoxy. We don't need to make a big mess, but we are going to come back through because we know this is going to be aligned perfectly once it cures. We'll come back through with a hand plane and just shave this top off and make this all blend in nicely together. It's not perfect right now, but it doesn't need to be yet. I'd rather have a little bit left there that I need to take off. A little bit more epoxy. And anything that squeezes out isn't going to matter because the wax paper will keep it from sticking. And the hand plane will take off the rest. That ought to be plenty. First we'll pull it in with a clamp. There's no epoxy on this one, so this screw doesn't need to be waxed. Snug it up. We don't want to over tighten it. Now we have a waxed screw. See, we're getting some squeeze out. And that ought to be good. Now we'll make sure we got, seems to be a little gap there. Put a little epoxy in there. We don't want to over tighten this because we don't want to starve that joint of epoxy. There's other glues for wood that like a nice tight joint. Epoxy doesn't mind a little gap. So we'll give it a little gap. Okay, let's take care of this one. Notice I'm putting epoxy on both sides. Bring this in with a clamp. Last, we have the waxed screw. Perfect. All right, we're not in a rush with this. We'll probably give it a couple of days. You know, it's not super hot out, and I do have the slow hardener on there. So we'll give it 2 days before I take it apart, because I got the whole other one over there to do still, to dry fit. Okay, the epoxy is curing pretty quickly right now. So let's take a look and see what this looks like. Well, waxing the screw seems to have worked. Now we'll stick these here and here, just so we don't release it too much. Little bit of extra epoxy there, and this is a little proud, but I left it like that on purpose. We're going to take care of that. Need to do a little bit more sanding, but this Rubrail is looking pretty good. Comes down to here, steps in for the oarlock, and then there is another joint right there. Little stepped scarf. White oak, mahogany, a thin strip of black walnut, and then cherry, I believe, on the inside here.